Hi, friends. We are here for our final installment, and we're saving the best for last. I have the very special pleasure of introducing Governor Mitch Daniels to come and talk to us today. So, again, like if you're just joining me, my name is Ms. Hitch. I'm coming to you from Fairfax Station, Fairfax County, Virginia, to give you a brief synopsis of the amazing storied life of Governor Daniels. I want you to know that he's presently sitting as the 12th president of Purdue University, and he is the former governor of Indiana. In fact, he was elected the 49th governor in 2004 in his first bid for any elected office. And then he was reelected in 2008 with more votes than any other governor in the state's history. And in his tenure, he went ahead and he pushed Indiana's business climate to among the nation's best. Lots of sweeping deregulation of the telecommunications industry and a lot of reforms aimed at strengthening the economy. His tenure at Purdue, he has prioritized student affordability and reinvestment in the university's strengths, breaking with the 36-year trend. Purdue's tuition is unchanged from 2012 through at least the 2021-2022 academic year. And I know as a former student, I just graduated this past year, I would have been overjoyed about that, just watching the price of each one of my classes go up. In addition to that, he is in recognition of his leadership as both a governor and a university president. Governor Daniels was named among the top 50 world leaders by Fortune magazine in 2015 and was elected to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in 2019. Prior to becoming governor, Daniels served as chief of staff to Senator Richard Lugar, senior advisor to President Ronald Reagan, and director of the OMB under President George W. Bush. He was also the CEO of Hudson Institute, a major contract research organization, something that we would call a think tank in our class. So the kids will see that there's a lot of connections here in between all of these different private public ventures. And you also worked for 11 years with Eli Lilly and Company on holding a number of top executive posts, including the president of Eli Lilly's North American pharmaceutical operations. So that is a mouthful. I just wanted to start off, is there anything that you want to highlight right off the top about your experience that do you think was maybe the most transformative or the most interesting that you want to highlight out of your amazing resume?
Well, I hope that didn't put the students to sleep for this last and important class, but I'll answer your question, Ms. Hitchcock. But first, I just want to say how much I appreciate this invitation on my own behalf and on behalf of Purdue University. And I want to congratulate every member of this audience. Like other schools, we know how important a signal of academic achievement, an advanced placement course is, and a good score on it. We pay a lot of attention to that. But the point I want to make is our school's a very rigorous one, known for being a little tougher than some. And we know that advanced placement students, in addition to the content they have displayed a mastery of, have also shown the grit and the diligence that is we know is essential to success at the college level. So congratulations on jumping into the course, taking the course, and now completing it. You know, the only thing I'll say after that long and too generous introduction is that I'm grateful that life gave me the chance to work in all three sectors of society. So the private, the productive sector that pays all the bills, the nonprofit sector where good deeds are done, and we honor that by not taxing those organizations. A university is one, and the Hudson Institute was one. And then, of course, I've done a number of stints in public life, and I worked both for a mayor, a senator, a couple of presidents, and then, of course, held office myself. So I guess I feel so fortunate that I had that diversity of experiences, and gave me, I think, an appreciation for the differences and, you know, for the special contributions each makes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that your resume truly shows that there are so many different components, and I think what's really interesting is that to be able to thread those together, that they don't operate in independent spheres. They're very much so reliant upon each other. They work together to serve different functions in our country, and all of that, that they can't be consumed by one of those sectors. So I'm sure that you can speak more to that as we get rolling. I do want to say thank you again for joining us and providing leadership and support to Purdue during these challenging times. Can you tell us a little bit about, beyond kind of your snapshot, what are some of the other professional and educational experiences that you've had that you felt were really important to kind of helping you on your journey?
Oh, well, I was lucky to go to a great public high school, and to what I felt it was a fine university and beyond. So I had great teachers, but most of what one learns, at least I learned, I think, came later. And I was really fortunate to work for some terrific leaders, certainly in business, and either directly or at close hand and proximity to effective leaders in government. So another, in my view, a set of lucky breaks that I got. But I'll just say this, and it may come up later in the discussion in different ways. My own view, and I think an American view of life, is that government, and in a slightly different way, effective nonprofit endeavors are what we do to make the important part of life flourish, and that's private life. That is where people earn their livings, develop their skills, raise their families, interact with others, give in the free society that we are so lucky to live in. And what we want to do, I always felt, is if a citizen can give some of her time or his time to those other sectors, by all means do it, and do it so that, however, so that the central parts of life can flourish, and people can achieve their potential, pursue their dreams under maximum conditions of freedom and support.
I hear a lot of Thomas Jefferson's words in the Declaration of Independence coming through in that conversation, so much about the role that government plays, that we're involved in a social contract, but that social contract has real limits in terms of how far it is to move into our lives, and that the benefit of being in government is so that we can flourish, and good governance is about emphasizing liberty of the individual. So I mean, I'm sure I'm going to put you in that category with Thomas Jefferson, in that I see just a lot of American political values coming through in what you've said has been critically important in your life. And I think for me, one of the more interesting things, and it's a theme that we've talked about a lot throughout this experience, the past 30 some odd episodes that we've cut, is that I very much so have asked students to think about the role that they play in this, and that this idea of learning about our system of government, like we can talk about it on air and we can talk about it in a classroom like I do with my own students. But if I were to say that that's all you need to know, I would be misrepresenting the reality of what being a part of a system of government and organized society entails. That you do have to go out and you have to learn on the streets, you have to learn in the boardrooms, you have to learn on the factory floors, and all of those things, they may not seem like they directly contribute to our political discourse, but they are very much so important threads that should be brought through there. So I really appreciate that idea that while the classroom is important, students really need to find those learning experiences outside of the classroom too. Does Purdue, and I should have looked this up, how does Purdue treat students as it relates to service learning or internships or things like that? I mean, I'm kind of curious to know. I'm a little bit off task here on the questions in front of me, but it's an interesting.
I think it's closer to the subject than you're giving yourself credit. First of all, Purdue, and this is now I think much more common elsewhere in higher ed. For a very long time, Purdue has encouraged its students and enabled its students to take internships, so-called co-op programs. And we're a strong engineering school, for instance, and experiential learning is the term you're going to hear a lot. That it's not new at our place, but it's being appreciated, I think, more and more elsewhere now, and that's a good thing. And the reason I think that your point is so relevant to citizenship and to certainly to those who hope to undertake some role in government or in politics later. I think the people who are the most effective and make the wisest decisions there are people who have had broad experience, who don't spend their whole lives. Now, we've had some great Americans who were careerists, who did spend essentially their whole working life in government, but I don't think that's the best model. And I want to say something in particular to the AP students. I've said this to graduates of Purdue a couple times in the last few years. You're on your way to becoming aristocrats. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Now, America was founded largely by people who wanted to move away from rule by a monarch, rule by hereditary nobles, people who had titles because their family had owned land and so forth. And the history of our country is moving away from that, steadily expanding the freedom of every individual. We've still got some work to do, but it's always been in the positive direction. And here's what I would urge you all to pay close attention to what Ms. Hitchcock just said, because the world is going to invite you. You're by definition, you're very talented. You're going to work hard. You're going to make really good grades. You're going to, launch yourselves on good careers. And there's a danger that you will naturally wind up associating only or almost exclusively with people like yourselves, people who are very, very bright. You probably work with people like that, live near people like that. You might marry somebody just like that and have kids just like you. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what I guess I'm encouraging you to do is to make sure you get out of that natural zone, know people, get to know people who live different lives. Because if you want to serve them or lead them, you need to understand them. And it won't happen that naturally in the world we're in now. So sorry that's a soapbox I've been on before, but I don't think it's completely irrelevant to the topics we're discussing.
It's not. We're talking about interests. And I think that we've had so many really fascinating conversations. One of the things that has been a great joy to me through this experience is that the conversation when I'm on the air is one-sided. It's me talking to myself in my basement, right? It couldn't be less. It feels very impersonal. But when
Sounds like fun to me. I'm
to
enjoying
to some degree. The greatest joy, though, has been the ability for students to reach out and to share with me the questions that they have, and just this flourishing of an understanding that interests are varied, that they are informed by our histories, that they are informed by our realities that are around us. And while we don't have to see that as a reason to keep people back, it would take us understanding each other to be able to overcome those things. And just the level of discourse that the students on Twitter have engaged in, really just trying to understand the realities of life for people. People are watching this in my backyard, my students are watching this, and this is being broadcast all across the globe. To be able to see these students interacting in real time and talk about interests in a way that it has never been nasty. They've always been beautiful to each other, courteous, understanding, compassionate. They've always said, you're doing great. I love this. And I think that kind of encapsulates this idea of what you're already beginning to have these experiences of learning about other people's interests, and that it requires us to extend that sphere into and to see that you're doing it all the time, really. Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm gonna step off of my soapbox and I'm gonna ask you, speaking of experience and experiential learning, your experience in government extends across a variety of roles in government, from working as a Senate Chief of Staff for Richard Lugar to spending several years with the Reagan and George W. Bush administrations in various different roles there. And then afterwards, you returned home to your your chosen home of Indiana, because you did. I was like, oh, he grew up in Pennsylvania, not too, like you're on either side. I grew up in Ohio, so I'm like Pennsylvania, Indiana. I'm like right in the middle. What lessons did you learn about governing and policymaking from the ranges of experiences you had working at the federal and state levels?
I think, first of all, some humility. Uh, Government is, and to a similar extent, nonprofits are frequently they may have great intentions, but they are frequently very clumsy and klutzy about accomplishing their worthy goals. This is why I always encourage young people who are interested in public life to make certain that they build some experience, preferably some credentials and some insights from the private sector. I think it makes you better and more appreciative of the challenges that you will face. And the simple reason for that is that in private life, in business of any kind, the world measures you, and you have to compete. And if you don't, someone will do it better, will satisfy your customer better than you did, and they'll win and you'll lose. Government and nonprofit leadership is more challenging in a way because you don't have the pressure of competition. Government's not going out of business. And when it goes broke, at least at the federal level, they can just print some more money, which is a problem that your generation is going to inherit very unfairly, because too much of it has been borrowed and spent before you arrived at adulthood and leadership. So I think that working in government and seeing some successes, yes, and some essential business that government must do, but also how difficult it is to do it well. And my own view is that in a principle you may have encountered in this course, I don't know, but there's a principle in political thought called subsidiarity. It's the theory that—
Tell us about it. Yeah, no, I
yeah,
want to
well,
know.
it's pretty simple. It's a viewpoint that decisions and action should be made at the lowest possible level, as close to the ground, as close to people as they can be. So if it can be done locally, do it. If it requires to be done at the state level, do it there. I think that working, as I was lucky enough to do, from City Hall to the White House and back again, gave me a strong appreciation for that. And we may come to it later, but I think in the response to the current pandemic, you're seeing there's a real essential value in dealing with a problem that's everybody's problem, but it's very different, state to state, city to city, and therefore you really wouldn't want to try to drive all that from the center.
Yeah, I think a lot of the students have asked questions about, especially towards in March and April, the beginning parts, very curious about how kind of and it's interesting as a teacher and a citizen to watch this evolution in students' thought. I think that in particular, coming from, I mean, I live in Fairfax County. It's a suburban / urban environment close to DC, very much so its own peculiarities. And so watching my students have different understandings and kind of impressions on the concept of governing, or what you've referred to as subsidiarity, governing closer to the people, has been pretty enlightening in the past 2 months. I mean, it's really just some of the questions that I'm getting from students, both far and wide, as well as close to home, are reflective of this shift in thought that I think I'm curious to see where it goes. Kids who've always said, "Oh, I'm an American first," and now they're starting to maybe think a little bit, they're still an American, but I always think it's interesting asking people where they're from and getting the answer. It kind of indicates where their heart resides. Are they a Virginian, or are they from the United States? Of course, they're both at the same time, but sometimes something as simple as answering that question speaks to their own interest. And it's interesting watching the kids kind of shift through this time. They call it political socialization. It's a generational event. So Okay, so speaking of democracy, what do you think students need to truly understand about our nation to become civic-minded individuals? I know you've kind of alluded to this, but I would love for you to expand on some of those points if you could.
I think it starts with an appreciation and historical understanding that we are the exception in the long sweep of history. That's why people to this day, quarter of a millennium after we got started, refer to this as the American experiment. And that's because for most of history, and this particular audience, I bet has absorbed more of that than a lot of young people have so far. But if so, you know that history doesn't belong to freedom or to those who protect it. It belongs to tyrants and kings and autocrats and militarists and dictators. And so the starting point for us is that it was America, the Americans of the late 18th century who broke through, and the tyrants of the world didn't like it and hoped, they were rooting, some of them still root, for this experiment to fail. And so it's may seem like it's our whole history, but of course we're a young country still, and this experiment of ours is fairly young. And what was it really about? You know, James Madison, you probably wrote, if men were angels, we wouldn't need government. We're not angels, and therefore a government has to an essential role, but it also has to be limited. You know, a lot of people have done bad things because they were greedy about money, and we've had to rein that in from time to time in our society, or call people to account for it. But that's not the only kind of greed there is. And in government, I saw a lot of an equally powerful lust, if you want to call it that, and that was the lust for power, for the ability to tell other people what to do and how to live. A lot of people in the modern day think that their motives are benevolent and benign, and maybe they are, but the results are usually not very good. And so this is a continuing experiment, and we could still fail. Your generation and each generation has to decide what kind of country it wants to live in, and how much of one's personal freedom to protect or surrender. And there will always be people, Madison knew it, Jefferson knew it, all the founders knew it, because they had grown up in a world where rights were handed down, if they were handed at all, from a king or from the state. And there are a lot of people in the world today who still think it ought to operate that way, but that's not been this nation's theory. This nation's theory has been that the rights are yours. They were given to you at birth by God, the founders thought, but certainly they are your natural rights, whatever your view, whatever your faith views. And so just I think the central task of an American or citizen who would be an active or a leadership citizen is to think about that question, and hopefully always remember how fragile these freedoms are, and that they have not had, if they were the natural way of things, it would have been that way throughout history, and it wasn't.
Well, it's like a master class in constitutional thought right there. I mean, we're really, I hear both sides of, Brutus. We've talked so much about Brutus. One was one of the foundational writings that the students are required to know. And Madison's counterpoints in 10 and 51 and other ones that some students have read beyond that. So, I think that it's a very beautiful synopsis of kind of that idea that comes back to this: where do your rights derive? And they do come in our political value system. Americans believe that they come from a creator, whomever that is, for whatever walk of faith that we're talking about, and that those powers that we delegate to the government are there to benefit us for good governance, but allowing us to be able to remain sovereign in issues of privacy and things that are close to us, our conscience, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a great cap to what we've talked about in the past month in particular.
Let me just make, if I
Yeah.
may, you just reminded me that there's a lot about this current situation that I hope the students are drawing some connections to. And for instance, there's been the 10th Amendment to the Constitution was a really important one to the people who wrote it into the Bill of Rights that said that powers, you just talked about delegated powers, and that was a very important question because again, the natural tendency of people, it's just human, I'm not faulting people, but it's a human tendency to want to grab more authority for themselves. And the founders worried about that. And so of course, it is a government of delegated powers. In theory, the central government can do only those things it's supposed to do. It's been told, it's been expressly given the authority to do. And then the 10th Amendment said the rest is reserved to the states or to the people. And the 10th Amendment has not been discussed in most of my lifetime. And people who believe sincerely in a very, very powerful, expansive government have treated it as an anachronism. Well, I've heard more about the 10th Amendment in the last few months than I can remember in forever. And why? Because there are a lot of states who want to go their own way, who disagree with the current president, let's say, or the administration about some element of how to work on this terrible problem. And so they are reviving this concept, which I think is an extremely important one. I think this is a very good thing. Whatever your view about the right way to deal with the pandemic, the idea that the governor of California or the governor of New Jersey or the governor of anywhere and mayors below that ought to have leeway and authority to do what they think is best and what is right for the people they're serving is a fundamental principle that again, I think is enjoying a little bit of a revival. And if so, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly has been interesting to hear the words, the 10th Amendment, on both the lips of conservatives and liberals in the United States. And it's perhaps a little bit of a leveling in terms of what it really means and under what scenarios we should reconsider where power goes. It's a debate that should be had. And I look forward to continued proliferation of a discussion about where these things should be, because it's it's a worthy conversation to have, especially when you're getting into the very real concerns that people have about liberty and life. I mean, those are, we're talking about things that really cut back right to our natural rights. So yeah, great. It's a fantastic observation. In studying history and government, we learn so much about how the past impacts our lives. You have mentioned your own concerns about how important it is for individuals in our own society. You've referenced history so much here. How can reading and studying history, and I'm going to put in there also the history of government, especially the history of the formation of our government, inform our understanding of our nation today, like who we are? Can you speak to that?
Thanks. Well, first of all, I do believe that it's not just helpful. I think it's a duty of people who would be active citizens, leadership citizens, or certainly public officials to understand our history. For one thing, to avoid repeating mistakes that have been made before. To study those things that were done very successfully and look for times that those principles or the way that a great a leader or leadership generation solved problems. But I think on top of that, to appreciate what we have here, and therefore the seriousness of the trust that comes to one who would lead a free people. it's easy to be a citizen of a despotism. You just try to keep your head down, your mouth shut, and not let the powers that be get mad at you. Being a citizen of a free society is work. And I think part of that work starts with understanding that it is something we all have to participate in, and what a privilege that is. And also that the flaws that we have, and there always will be, important ways to improve, are not an indictment of everything that went before. As a matter of fact, as I think I said once, the history of this country has been all in one direction: the expansion of freedom, the treatment of people with more dignity, and widening the circle constantly. So if you don't know any history, you're easily misled. There's some bad history around out there. I think some really almost intentionally misleading stuff about our country. And the antidote to being to suckering for that is to read what really happened.
Mm-hmm.
I guess
Yeah,
the
I
other
mean,
thing, I'll just mention one other thing,
yeah.
is Hitchcock. I think biography, I get asked all the time by students at Purdue, or have been asked for a long time, what I might recommend people pay attention to if they're interested in, especially if they're interested in public life. And I recommend biography. I don't think there's any better way to try to prepare yourself for positions of responsibility than studying people who held it before, both their achievements, but also their errors and their foibles and failings. Biography of people who led important and interesting lives are usually pretty fun to read too. If they're well done, they're not boring. So that's a little free advice you didn't ask for.
No, uh, in this experience, I've gotten an opportunity to make new friends. As I say, I'm a lifelong Girl Scout, so I always think make new friends, keep the old, right? But I've made so many new friends, and I think the most interesting thing is we talk about what we're reading, and I'm a voracious reader, and so I think that one of the things about historical biographies is that not only am I seeing, and for me, I'm constantly reminded that I'm not a perfect person. Like I make mistakes on the daily, and I think that the best thing that I can do is to apologize and take accountability for the mistakes that I've made, whether they're intentional or not. It doesn't matter. I need to be clear with that, and I've learned that time and time again in reading biographies of leaders who take accountability and who choose to not. And I think that it's a really critically important component, but I take solace in reading about individuals who I have put on a pedestal, and then I come to find, well, they had flaws too. They made mistakes. They were not perfect beings. They, were confused, and they felt lost at times. And sometimes being in these positions of great power is very isolating and lonely. But it's, the path that they walk is a decision they make for the betterment of their community for various reasons. So, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Hey, read more, read, read about your history. Yeah.
When you're ready to run for office, I'm ready to vote for you, because you just displayed, I think, an important trait that I think the greatest of our leaders, most of them at least, always had, which was a sense of humility, a sense of their own, to doubt their own infallibility. Ben Franklin said, let us resolve to doubt just a little our own infallibility. And too many people rise to positions of authority. This could be in business as well as government, and it goes to their heads, as the old saying goes. And I think they make a big mistake, and they also don't give our fellow citizens enough credit when they refuse or can't bring themselves to admit error. And you see it all the time. I always said, oops is not a hard word. And I won't go into details, but the 8 years that my teammates and I served our state of Indiana, we made more change, both both friends and those who disagreed would agree that they were 8 years of big change every single year. And I told our people and I told the state, we're going to make mistakes but there'll be mistakes of commission. We're going to make them on our front foot. We're going to do things and move things and change things. And when you do that, you're not going to hit the bullseye every time. And I said, so we're going to make somewhere along the line, and we did, some of these things won't work too well. And we're going to own up to it and correct it, try to learn from the mistake. Don't make it a second time, get it right on the second chance. And, I think that's a concept of leadership and public service that the people whose biographies I've enjoyed the most and admired the most usually displayed.
Yeah, I agree with you. Hey, I would vote for you again. Humility is fantastic. You got my late endorsement. All right. My last question for you today, because I want to make sure that I'm respectful for your time and appreciative of all the time that you've given to us this afternoon. Having worked with the Senate and later with 2 separate presidential administrations, what do you think would be interesting for students to know about interactions between the branches of government?
That they're in tension, that people, again, in the most human of ways, generally seek to add or certainly to jealously protect the authority and the power that they have. But I think that we've talked about it a lot here, and I'm glad. We're very fortunate in a country this large and this diverse and this dynamic where things are changing. This is a land of, it's been said, of never-ending change. I think that a system where with these different layers of government, which are not all controlled from the center, which they are in many other places. There are countries that have elections and generally free institutions, but France is an example. Most of the decisions all come down from the top. And I think that, again, it's very helpful to, if you're going to be active, to maybe to start at the local level. Many people, I'll tell you with complete confidence that many of the students taking part in this class within a few years will have opportunities, because it's young people or smart young people or upwardly mobile in politics and government. You're cheap, for one thing. You'll have a chance to jump right in, and I'm all for that. That certainly was what happened to me. But don't be careful to not to get too infatuated too early and miss that diversity of experiences that I keep talking about, which could be working at different levels of government, or I hope in most cases will mean that you'll spend a lot of time in private life learning how the actions of government fall out and actually impact the lives of all the rest of us.
Beautifully stated. Well, Governor, I want to thank you for drawing us into your library. I feel like this was a great treat for the students and a wonderful capstone on our entire experience. And thank you for your service, your continued service to your community.
Well, it was my privilege, really. I remember taking advanced placement tests. Yes, they actually existed back then. And I just want to end where I started by congratulating the students for the extra efforts that you have demonstrated by being in this course at all. Good luck. I know you'll all do just great on the exams to come. And I just want to remind you what I said, that I think that it's not just the additional learning that you'll absorb, as valuable as that is, the personal characteristic of determination and diligence and grit. I'm telling you, we value that enormously at Purdue, because we know that has as much to do with ultimate success in school and in life as any other single factor.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Well, guys, we had a special treat, and I'm going to say thank you so much to the governor. And I'm going
Bye-bye.
to close out with some closing thoughts for all of you. So give me a second here while I transition, because everything has to be written down for this one. Can't do anything without it. And I think I have to possibly switch back on my things here. So, right. I don't really have a ton of stuff to give you in terms of end of the course, closing stuff. But I think that this experience for me has been one that I'm so lucky to be able to be in this position. And before I get to why I think that's true, I want to give you some words of wisdom that were given to me by somebody who took a leap of faith in my ability to do this. Mr. Jim Honeycutt said to me a couple weeks ago, as I was going through this experience, sometimes successful, sometimes not. And he said, hey, look, it's never the right time to panic. It's either too early or it's too late. And I stopped mid-sentence in our conversation and I was like, this is such an important thing for us to hear. There's a couple of there's a couple of things that stick with me in my life that are little quotes that I like to kind of flourish my room with. And I think that this is going to be one of them moving on because we are in such a time of great anxiety given the situation that we're in. And I know that this time, me having a one-sided conversation with you, I've never had an opportunity to ask you, hey, how are you doing? And what's going on in your life? And that's just the nature of what this is. But I do want you to know that coming back around to what's important. I've said this a couple of times that you're more than a test. Well, I want you to be successful on this test, and I think that what we're telling you and what you've learned in this course is important for that reason. But you, number one, are not alone in this time. I think that's a really critically important thing, and to establish that you are a part of a community already, and that while we're not together with our communities, one of the things that I want to point out to you, actually I'll come back to that in a second. I'm going to skip around my slide deck, kind of just riffing today, is that your community took a great leap of faith in asking you to learn about what it is in this experience, this American experiment in democracy, to borrow language from the governor. It's something that you are invited to be a part of, that there is a seat at the table and it's waiting for you. Sometimes the path to that seat is obscured. There's things that are in the way. It seems like you're not welcome, but we are in that promise of what America is to be. That seat is there for you should you decide to take it. And I hope that you do. I hope that you recognize that you already are a part of your community and you already are growing inside of that community, whether it be in your home, helping out your neighborhood, advocating for something in your school, looking out for friends. There are little things about being a part of this experiment in democracy that you have already started to play with. And I want to encourage you to continue doing that because that is more important. And I think I'm not going to go out on a limb here if I tell you that College Board agrees with me here, that this is more important than just this content, and that you should take this learning out of doors and continue this conversation with your community and then make determinations about where you want to go with that. Service to your community doesn't have to be running for office, but certainly it can include that. There are tons of things around there around you in which you can give of yourself, and the reward of receiving in return is so overwhelming. I do believe that my special reward is the beautiful community that I'm not even full-time talking to the students on Twitter, but the things that they talk about on a daily basis, that is a constant conversation. I feel like I'm listening in on a constitutional ratification convention. It's beautiful. And you guys, I want you to recognize that you don't need me to continue that conversation. I can, and I can answer questions, but the most important question that I have for you is, what do you think? And what are you going to do about it? that's the investment that we've put into you. You are a part of my little garden. I've planted some information in you. Your other teachers have planted your big time assistant on this journey. Your AP government teacher has invested so much more time and effort into you. And we've done that together so that you can become a mighty oak in the forest of your community, a pillar of your community. Why? Because I really truly believe that there are good people in the world, and they are you. And you have something to do for the betterment and the reward of seeing people flourish. It's a beautiful thing. Don't quit doing it. That being said, when you sit for that test, coming back around to it, I'm just going to reiterate the things that Dr. Stephen Meinhold said yesterday and the day Tuesday. Relax. It's a test. It's going to be done in 50 minutes. I don't want to minimize it. I certainly don't think it's a trivial thing. I don't think it's not a lot of effort. I know you still want to continue to study. I know you still want me to hand off questions. I will do that. I will put them on Twitter. I will put them on the drive. They will be there. I will try my hardest to answer some of your questions. Remember, I can't answer your questions after Monday. I'm not answering any questions about the test questions. But anything that I produce and put out there between now and Monday at 4 o'clock, you can talk to me about it, or you can have a conversation, even better, with the hundreds of students who are actively engaged in a conversation on Twitter. They are beginning to grade each other. They are having off-bar conversations. They've created their own community. It is theirs, and you are a part of it. Answer the question. Don't make it overly complicated. Just make sure that read it twice, right? Answer and go, start answering that question. Come back around once you are done. Make sure that you have answered the question. And wherever you are when that 5-minute is up, just submit it. Just submit it, right? You will do marvelously, I know. The last component is clarity and organization. We've talked about this, that you just can start to cut off some of the flourishes that you might have used all throughout the school. I gave you the crowning achievements last class of what I envision as a perfect FRQ and a perfect concept application cobbled together that can help you figure out where you need to go in this. So those are my final remarks on that. And I am going to say what needs to be said, which is thank you to all my people. This is my community that I am so appreciative of. First of all, to Mr. Jim Honeycutt for taking a chance on me. I don't know why you did, but thank you. I hope we're all happy. And I've learned so much. I mean, so much. I don't know if you guys know this, but it's usually about 10 hours of research and writing, and then I put another 2 hours in to present each one of these. Are they perfect? Nope, they are not perfect. I'm a perfectionist. I'm trying to live the mantra, the enemy of good is perfect, but I'm coming close to it, right? Trying the best I can given the situation. Special thank you to Dr. Stephen Meinhold for continuing to assist me in so many different ways, helping me with questions, helping me go through my questions, et cetera, and taking a risk on me as a fledgling reader just a couple of years ago. Of course, my producer, Dana Colvin, you guys can't see her, but she's my new best friend, and I know she's laughing right now. And Garrett, who helped me on days when Dana was crazy busy, and the DC, and my friends at College Board, to my students, my beautiful students at Thomas Jefferson High School and the online campus. You shared me with the world, and I know that took time and effort away that I could be devoting to you full time. You guys are amazing and beautiful, and I miss you so much. And you know how I cannot wait for us to get back together and celebrate your impending graduation and your flocking off into the different corners of the world. The faculty and the administration at Thomas Jefferson for greenlighting my ability to do this, as well as on the online campus. Fairfax County for making me capable of doing this. My friends on the AP government group for keeping it real. I'm making sure that I am doing my best, that when I make a mistake that I rectify it. And as a matter of fact, you guys should check out Twitter, because I had to eat crow yesterday. I did make a mistake. There was a teacher that I did a little dismissing to, Mr. Stephen Rice, who was right about a thesis that I just misread. So you guys should go back and take a look at that. The College Board online teacher community, my friends at the James Madison Memorial Fellowship Foundation, teachers, if you're looking for the answer to the question, which is how did I learn all of this, which you're probably not, I'm going to say that I was given the greatest gift of a master's from the James Madison Memorial Fellowship Foundation. If you want more information on it, look it up online or hit me up because I am obsessed with them. And of course, my alma mater, Virginia Tech, and my friends at iCivics who've also invested so much time, effort, and love into me. So Amber, thank you. Emma, love you. All of you guys, love you so much. And all of my new friends and old friends on Twitter. And of course, most importantly, you guys don't see my supporting cast in the background, my husband, my kids, my mom. They have made me happy and sane throughout this entire time, and to my family and my friends beyond that as well. So that brings me to almost the end. College Board, because they knew that I don't like crying, but they're going to try to make me cry. It's not going to happen. They made a little video about the things that all we have experienced, all of the online people have experienced. So I'm actually going to bow out and return to my life as a very normal government teacher, just a very normal, casual, just your neighborhood teacher. I'm going to follow in the footsteps of a founding father who I think is the most compelling of stories. That's my neighbor to the west or east. That's George Washington, who twice walked away from massive undertakings. Of course, his were far more greater than mine, but I'm not even trying to say that they're the same, but whatever. But I'm going to be just like our founding father, and I'm going to retire happily into the background and let you guys, I'm passing the mantle on to you. This is everything I know, and I'm passing it on to you for you guys to continue in exploring and finding a place and a voice and an action for you to take in this experiment in American democracy. So I hope that you guys enjoy this video, and good luck on Monday. You guys are going to do amazing. Of all the good things that I do in the world, I don't know how to share with the computer sound. Sorry, guys, we're gonna have to start from the top. I'm gonna say goodbye again. What would it be without a mistake? It wouldn't be a complete class. Okay, I'm sharing, I'm turning my camera off. Hopefully you guys will hear this, and I am gonna say goodbye.
We are live.
So we're going to walk you through everything you need to know, and you're going to have it. And so, may the 4th be with you.
Continuiamo anche il nostro giro per l'Italia.
You Are a Local Lunatic shared this via Twitter. I'm really, really grateful for @JacobsPhysics and @Mr. JB Physics and just @College Board in general for doing so much for these AP exam reviews. I actually get stuff a lot more than I did before COVID happened, and I'm just really, really grateful for that. Smiley face.
All right, so we're talking about the overall big picture of period 4. Here are some things I just want you guys to remember.
KOA shared on TikTok, AP English Zoom streams are my only social interaction right now. #FYP, #isolation, #AP English.
They would send large ships of laborers just to collect the guano and get on the ship. Is collect the right word? Do you mine guano? Do you excavate it? I don't know what the verb is there. I'm supposed to be using.
And we're going to be focusing on tone. Specifically, how do you read and interpret tone?
Karen Tabola Moore on Facebook shared, my students have enjoyed the AP Latin videos with Jeannie Luangu. Since I can only give a live Zoom class twice a week, this has been a great support.
Or I could say I want my lawyer and they have to get me my representation. But, and here's our but for today, that is going to sacrifice the abilities of the community.
Am I sharing the slideshow right now, by the way?
Nope. If you are, I can't see it.
Utkarsh Kali shared on Twitter, thank you for the helpful AP classes on YouTube. My preparation for AP Calc VC has become so much easier and efficient.
So I drew this like 4 o'clock this morning. So it's not beautiful, but I think it gets the point.
You turn over another card and they get compared and that person would win. Tell me if you do it differently, Mr. Schultz.
The more that you can find that connection within yourself, within the character, I feel like you write the character with a lot more depth.
Learning about the economy is important, and I wish more people did what you're doing.
My advice to all the students out there, whatever it is you choose to go into, make sure that it's a passion that burns in your belly.
I learned so much working in local government about public service. It teaches you that it's 24/7 and that you have to learn to listen.
I am someone who believes in following your passion, right, and working hard. And if you kind of find that there's something out there that you think is a need in the market and no one else is making it, then maybe you have to be a little bit creative.
11th grade U.S. history is the reason we're talking, because I don't think I would have picked up Ron Chernow's biography of Alexander Hamilton if I hadn't written a paper on Alexander Hamilton in high school.
Asia K3 shared on Instagram, I'm so glad he came. He's the reason I was able to get more interested in U.S. history, and I always listen to the Hamilton soundtrack when studying for English. Emoji.
We have a message here from Girleen from Instagram. She says, definitely worth waking up before noon.
And so you just connect your battery to your magnet like this, and then you get copper. Ta-da!
Look at that. That's amazing.
When are we ever going to need calculus? You'd be surprised. I mean, you might make videos and then calculate like the breaking pressure of Thanos' abdomen if Ant-Man were inside it.
This one hit close to home. This is very special for me. Mr. Walters teaches in Managua, Nicaragua, and that's where I was born. And I want to say hello to all the students out there.
Lyra Matt tweeted, I watch every AP Lit video. They're so helpful, especially for students whose first language is not English. Ms. Barber and Mr. Carter's enthusiasm and passion inspired and encouraged me not to give up.
Mire, Julia de Burgos nace, es todo un mito en la littérature caribeña.
Pour souligner encore ce qu'on essaie de faire, on veut expliquer des idées et des opinions.
Mrs. Lowe shared on Twitter, these videos are excellent. They do a great job of reviewing mixed material with an awesome job of presenting new material.
好，下面是 cultural presentation。抱歉让大家坐着哈，但是这个很重要。
今日も一緒に日本語頑張って勉強しましょうよ。はい、それで。
Chanel Kernander said on Twitter, love Mr. Escobar and Miss Barber's videos for my AP Lit students. You two are awesome. Tuning in live from Houston, Texas.
What'd you say for Dabo? Did you answer what that means?
Yeah, future. I will give. Just as Gandalf parted ways with the hobbits before they undertook the scouring of the Shire, the time is almost here for Josh and me to sail into the West.
Thanks for showing up every day and reviewing the course with us. And remember, on the exam, sound like you've taken the course. Be specific and be scientific.
It's been a blast working with you all spring. And like I said, this chapter of your life isn't over. You now have a chance to rewrite.
Thank you so much for watching Mark and me for these last 30, I don't know, however many sessions we had. And if it weren't for you, we wouldn't have had these sessions.
Well, thanks for watching. And one final piece of advice. If the question seems really complicated, it's probably not.
Gracias por haberme acompañado durante estas semanas.
I just want to say thank you to all the amazing AP Statistics students out there that have been following along with us for the past 6 weeks.
Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it and hope these videos have helped.
Hearing from you and seeing the pictures that you've sent us of your pets, thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you to everyone for watching, for tuning in, for continuing your educations. Best of luck on your exams.
You've prepared, you're ready, do your best on this exam, and then congratulate yourself no matter what you get.
Optimum Fortunam Omnibus. Best of luck to everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to all of our AP Bio review lessons and our practice exam.
Bon courage, as we say en français.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Luke and I really had a super fun time, and we hope you learned a lot.
Thank you to all of the AP Chemistry students who watched the videos.
You're good enough, you're smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like you.
Thanks for tuning into all these videos. Music theory friends, don't forget to resolve your tendency tones.
You guys have got this. Remember, you are the solution.
Thank you so much for joining me the past month and a half. It's been such a journey and such a treat for me.
Hey, thanks for watching the last 6 weeks, especially the calculus crew.
You guys are awesome. You are excellent. You are brilliant. I really, really enjoyed our time together, and I know you guys are going to rock that exam next week.
Just remember that you have worked your butts off this year. Y'all are going to do great.
It is time for you to shine.
Type your response, copy it, paste it in the submission box. Good luck.
Hey, arigato. Benkyou ganbatte kudasai. Remember to practice on the app that comes out next week.
Y'all are going to do great. And remember, geography is everywhere.